We got a new Smash game on the way, and you know what that means. Roster talk. Everyone's got their own takes on what the new entry's starting cast will look like. It's like a giant contest for bragging rights, trying to piece out who caught the eyes of Sakurai and crew and got an invite. And what self-respecting speculator would I be if I didn't throw my own hat into the ring? But you know me, I can't just do the same thing everyone else is, so let's take this a little further. While everyone else is putting one roster together and calling it a day, we're gonna make two rosters. I want to cover multiple scenarios that could happen, and so creating just one of these things wouldn't do that justice. For part one, we're going to put something more conventional together based on more grounded predictions. I call it the safe roster. But before we get to the roster proper, we need to lay down some ground rules. I want this to feel as authentic to the official style as possible, and to do that, we need to understand what we know of Sakurai and his team's thought processes. While we don't know everything that goes on behind the curtain, we can use recurring patterns, official statements, and the project plan for the previous game as reference. While it's true they're more like guidelines than hard rules, they are enough to give us a foothold so we have an idea of what we're doing. And considering all the misconceptions and hasty assumptions that always make the rounds, having that foothold is paramount to making an accurate prediction. First, key point number one. Moveset potential and uniqueness are kind of a big deal. It's something Sakurai has been very upfront about. Every new character, last-minute clones excluded, should bring something new and interesting with them. The more varied things they have in their source material, the better chance they have of being able to stand out. I've seen a lot of speculators treat movesets as an afterthought, hammered out after characters are already chosen, but building character concepts is an integral part of the selection process, and we've even seen characters get left on the cutting room floor because everything they could do felt too much like a retread. Moving on, key point number two. It's all about the timing. For first-party newcomers who aren't retro throwbacks from the 80s, it's very important to be relevant at just the right time, usually around when development on a Smash game begins and newcomers are picked out, or sometime between them but still well before the game's release. This ensures the characters they choose will be recognized by the greater Nintendo fanbase instead of leaving people scratching their heads. And since we have most of the quote-quote all-stars already, it makes a lot of sense to focus on the rising stars. Not that it's meant as a snub to older fan favorites or anything, Sakurai and crew just think the rookies matter too. So for Smash Switch, we're probably looking at a range from mid-2016 to 2017. But within that bubble of relevance, remember key point number three. Look at more than just the first option. Back during Smash 4 speculation, almost everyone just assumed our options for Pokemon newcomers were either Zoroark or returning Mewtwo with a new Mega form. They called it a day and didn't bother to look any deeper, which was how Greninja oh so appropriately snuck up on us. And then it also happened with Fire Emblem, where nearly everyone outside the FE fandom just penciled in Chrom and called it a day, as if he was the only possible option. And then it turns out apparently Chrom and Robin were both planned early on, but only Robin made it through all the hurdles. We saw this mindset of only looking at the most obvious character from a series lead speculators to draw the completely wrong conclusions twice last time, so keep that in mind and be sure to look beyond the surface. But in case of emergency, there's key point number four. Adapt when necessary. Every Smash game has surprise announcements that break quote-quote rules we thought were unbreakable. Every time it happens, people always freak out and decide everything we know is a lie and that literally anything could happen now. But guys, just because one thing wasn't true doesn't mean none of them are. And this all or nothing thinking doesn't help us as speculators. All it ever means is that the rules were different than we thought they were. And the best thing we can do as speculators is try and learn the details behind the decision and adapt our predictions accordingly. After all, Cloud himself may not have had a history with Nintendo, but it doesn't mean there aren't still guidelines to who they look at. And if anyone so far feels frustrated or personally attacked, hear me out with key point number five. Try not to think in terms of reps. I've seen so many Smashers treat the roster like some kind of hierarchy, a members-only club that determines who matters and who doesn't. Who deserves more reps, they say. We need a rep for this series. This character has earned a spot. This series has too many reps. Undeserving. Sakurai bias. How dare they? I know it's easy to get emotionally invested in your favorites, and it feels like a slap to the face when yours aren't included and some other guy you don't care about does get in. But this whole reps thing, Sakurai doesn't look at it that way. He isn't trying to pass divine judgment on who matters and who doesn't. His team is just trying to find the most compelling newcomer choices. We're the ones getting all tribal over it, and honestly, we need to be better than that. So if you see some of the choices in this prediction and you start feeling a white-hot righteous fury rising inside of you, take a step back and remember that it isn't meant as an insult. I'm just following in Sakurai's footsteps. Taking all that into account? Alright, now let's take a look at what may be our next Smash roster. Yeah, I know, it's a lot to take in. As big as, you know. I based the safe roster off the idea that Smash Switch began as an enhanced port of Smash for Wii U and then became an iterative sequel. A new game in spirit that reuses the full engine and assets of its predecessor and builds on top of it. Because of that, everyone present in Smash 4 stuck around. 0 cuts, plus 2 returning veterans and the usual share of newcomers, gives us a whopping 70 total characters if you count the Mii types separately. A colossal roster even before DLC, and all due to the unique circumstances. That's not to say everyone would make a one-to-one transition though. You've already seen Link with a new look, and my personal theory is he's getting reworked a little to incorporate stuff from Breath of the Wild, a revamp on par with what Bowser and Pit got in Smash 4. I can also see Zelda getting a similar revamp, again with Breath of the Wild as inspiration. Then Sheik may once again get an original design inspired by the newest Zelda game, just like the one from Brawl that carried over into 4 that was based on unused Twilight Princess concept art. As for Ganondorf, hard to say, but I'm holding out for an original design for him as well, as a fully revived Avatar of Calamity wreathed in ancient armor, maybe even with an ancient tech trident as well. Hey, we can hope, right? And beyond Zelda characters, I also have a hunch Samus might finally get a touch-up herself, bringing in elements from Samus Returns. But enough about boring overview stuff, let's get into something interesting. Starting off, the 2 characters whose buses came back. Well, technically 3 I suppose, since these are 2 characters right here. Nearly everyone got caught off guard by the Ice Climber's absence from Smash 4, left out in the cold because the hardware limitations of the 3DS made it so too many pairs of climbers running around caused rampant performance problems that proved impossible to prevent. There may have also been issues getting the duo to work right in 8-player Smash, but that's just a theory. However, the Switch is enough of a step up in power that it seems those issues will be a thing of the past, and so these fan favorites will be left on the bench no longer. I do think they'll get retooled and streamlined a little though. Nana will be made easier to manipulate to make her go where you want and less prone to getting herself pointlessly killed. And I'm confident in saying the devs will go well out of their way to ensure these 2 can't pull off any infinites they've had in past games. Maybe even by making it so Nana can't grab, and by removing any hits done from her pummel animation when Popo has someone grabbed. But in exchange, maybe some kind of mechanic where Nana automatically follows up Popo's throws with a stronger hit if she's nearby. Moving on to the other guy people never expected to see leave. Star Wolf was a victim of circumstance. The Star Fox series as a whole had been dormant for years when Smash 4 started development, and so he just wasn't very high priority to work on. But now things are happening again thanks to Star Fox Zero, even though it fell flat on its face. And now there's an argument to bring him back again. Unlike the Ice Climbers, I think Wolf would more or less keep the weird, ambiguously semi-clone moveset he had in Brawl, since there isn't anything egregious that needs overhauling. They'll probably be pulling from Star Fox Zero for its series looks and especially voices, so that'll probably be where Wolf gets his from, unfortunately. They might also take this opportunity to give him a less derivative final smash, or maybe they'll keep the knockoff Landmaster and focus their manpower elsewhere. Hard to say. With our returning veterans squared away, let's look at the main event, Smash Switch's possible newcomers. Xenoblade has only grown as a franchise since Shulk first joined the fight, and a newcomer from Nintendo's now flagship JRPG series is a pretty safe bet. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 apparently started development late in 2014, if you can believe that, meaning enough work was probably done by mid-2016 that Sakurai would have been encouraged to look there rather than Xenoblade Chronicles X. It's kind of like the situation Pokemon X and Y were in last time, and while I wouldn't rule out Elma entirely, I think these 2 here are the better bet. Rex and Pyra would join as a different take on the puppeteer archetype, with Pyra programmed to stay close to Rex whenever possible and strengthen him as their affinity grows, and so keeping them separate would be a key part of fighting against them. Rex's various arts and combat animations would form the backbone of his moveset here in Smash, making for one hell of a starting point for a character concept. And while I think they won't have Rex switch blades mid-combat because it'd require a whole lot of extra work, I do think Pyra's alter ego Mithra will show up in some form, even if only during their final smash. Moving on, next we have an upstart new face from a much older series. Captain Toad's one of those guys who's just too endearing not to like. From a breakout role in Super Mario Galaxy to his own spin-off title, this cowardly adventurer who wants to be braver is the perfect example of a rising star, and his recurring role in Super Mario Odyssey only exemplifies that. While there's that whole thing about Captain Toad not being able to jump normally, I think they'll let that slide in Smash and merely give him some of the worst jumps of the cast. His focus on grounded combat would gel with the deceptive strength Toads have been known to have, as well as a very useful grab and throws since Toads are also known for that. They could even tie into the Explorer angle by having him attack with various Marioverse objects and power-ups he pulls out of his trusty Explorer's pack. Imagine the little guy taking out a Mega Mushroom for his final smash and becoming a big threat. Now on to Nintendo's second biggest franchise, where an interesting situation might be unfolding. The one everyone has pegged to get in, and it's easy to see why. As Gen 7's grass starter, Decidueye has a plant-based power set that we don't have on the Smash roster right now. The exact kind of uniqueness the Smash devs look for. With the mannerisms of a calm, calculated sniper, Decidueye would be more about powerful, precise projectile shots rather than rapid running and gunning. A wide repertoire of moves from its natural move pool in Sun and Moon would provide more than enough for a starting point to build a moveset around. Pokemon characters especially are really good for that. You could even work in real-world archery techniques, maybe in the form of long-ranged, angleable arrow shots for a couple smash attacks. Needless to say, Decidueye's got a lot of potential, but I wouldn't be so quick to just pencil it in and move on. I've noticed a lot of parallels to how people treated Chrom back during Smash 4 speculation. And while Decidueye won't have to worry about feeling like a retread, the timeframe Smash Switch seems to have started development in would put Sun and Moon in the same situation Fire Emblem Awakening was. If Chrom had been more unique, we'd have seen two non-clone newcomers from the same game get into Smash. And this time, I think we're going to see that happen for real. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the next Robin. A highly prominent non-starter in the vein of Lucario, Lycanroc's gotten a lot of attention that isn't so obvious if you haven't followed Pokemon as a series lately. Up to and including being Ash's signature mon in the anime this generation, just like Greninja was. Combine that with the Midday and Dusk form's distinct feral quadrupedal builds and an Earth-based power set every bit as rare and unique as Decidueye's, and you have an argument for both fighters from Alola to get in. There are actually many ways Lycanroc could work in Smash, ranging from a multi-form stance system concept, where each has mostly the same base moves but different stats and hitboxes, to simply just using the Dusk form since it's the biggest deal now. Since all three forms either only attack when threatened, or in Midnight's case, like to outright provoke opponents, a bait and punish style fits them perfectly, supported by control elements like the infamous Stealth Rock. Add in other stuff like maybe a solo Dusk concept getting a Fury State gimmick inspired by Ash's Lycanroc that grant a short-lasting boost of some kind, and you have a very compelling character that should not be slept on lest history repeat itself. But for now, on to someone who missed out last time. You'd never think it at first glance, but Bandana D actually has a lot of support, and it's not unwarranted. This elite guard of King Dedede, who's also somehow friends with Kirby, has racked up prominent roles ever since Superstar Ultra, to where now he's basically the series' fourth main character. Not only that, but Bandana D has unique abilities to offer through being a master of the Spear, a weapon type we haven't seen at all in Smash so far. By combining Spear techniques with the Parasol ability he's also used occasionally, and various other stuff associated with Waddle Dees and related creatures, there's a surprising amount of moveset potential there. And what better way to pay tribute to his under-the-radar legacy than with a final Smash inspired by his very first appearance all the way back in 1996. Yeah, he's been around longer than you'd think. Every Smash game after the first has had a throwback pick from the NES era or earlier, and I think this time the standout for that is Takamaru really got the short end of this stick, stuck in obscurity watching his counterparts Link, Samus, and Pit go on to become household names while he saw little more than rare cameos for over 25 years. In fact, that lack of recognition was what got him the thumbs down for Smash last time. But now, his game has a worldwide release on the eShop, and between that, his prior assist trophy role, and a bit part in Nintendo Land, things are different. It all comes down to whether the list of assists get changed up this time, and I think they will, freeing him up to be Smash Switch's retro newcomer. He's got the means to pull it off too, borrowing from his game both in moveset and in spirit, with a playstyle focused on evasiveness and short bursts of offense to avoid being overwhelmed. Decisive swings of his katana would be supplemented by various throwing weapons, spell scrolls, and the almighty Inazuma Lightning. Last but not least, they did say the Smash Palette would be used in the future in some way. and I think they'll refer to it for at least one newcomer in Smash Switch's base roster. And for that, who better than... Does King K. Rool need any introduction at this point? DK's arch nemesis has had a mountain of fan support for well over a decade now. He has the bravado, the uniqueness, plenty of moveset potential, everything a Smash newcomer could ask for, except relevance. But while that's been crippling his chances normally, the Smash ballot may give the big guy a way around it. And if that Mii costume is any indication, he is on Sakurai's radar. Given the circumstances, I think things really could align in his favor. K. Rool is well known for changing his gimmick constantly. He's been a conqueror, a pirate, a mad scientist, and this long list of personas comes with a repertoire to match. He'd have tools at his disposal like his blunderbuss, propeller pack, and his classic crown toss, along with being able to literally throw his weight around. Ideally, competing as K. Rool would mean playing the role of a cunning, conniving villain, using his crafty moves and projectiles to confirm into powerful blows to crush your competition and claim victory. That's our list of first parties, but Smash has been inviting a few guest fighters every game for a while now. And this roster has 2 new third-party fighters. Our first one, Rayman's seen a renaissance of sorts in recent years. After spending a while languishing in spin-offs with those ever-divisive Rabbids, a pair of stellar platformers catapulted him to the spotlight again. And the latter was even going to be a Wii U exclusive before things happened. But in the time since, Nintendo and Ubisoft seem to have patched things up, complete with a Mario spin-off that somehow made the Rabbids likable? But despite what you might hear about them elsewhere, I think the Limbless Wonder here is more likely to get the nod for Smash. In fact, those disembodied hands and feet would be a key part of Rayman's playstyle, using disjointed attacks to bob and weave and win offensive exchanges with opponents. A lot of his individual attacks could come straight from Origins and Legends. Seriously, it's like they use Smash as a point of reference. And of course, his signature hair helicopter would be worked in as a way to slow his descent in the air. Now for our second guest fighter, someone who's been getting far too overlooked. Yeah, so Monster Hunter's quietly become one of Capcom's biggest franchises, and with a constant presence on Nintendo's recent systems, one exception aside. This modern star of a series has built up quite the fan base with its difficult yet highly rewarding gameplay that tasks players with bringing down massive beasts by carefully watching their behavior and habits in combat and striking only when the time is right, basically by thinking like a hunter. Many speculators' eyes may be elsewhere, but I think a playable Monster Hunter is a very real possibility. Hey, it can't go any worse than the first fighting game they were in. The key here is to capture the feel of the Monster Hunter series and transplant that into Smash's environment. The Hunter would likely have a split between male and female alts like with other similar characters, and use the iconic Rathalos armor as the default, but some of the plethora of other famous armor sets as alternatives. Just like when fighting any of the series' famous monsters, the Hunter's playstyle would be patient and deliberate, focused on figuring out opponents' habits, using various tools and setups to prepare, and stepping in when an opening appears for devastating strikes. And there you have it, our first of 2 comprehensive takes on what Smash Switch's base roster may look like. I know you probably have a few questions, so I'll do what I can to cover them now. So first, you might be wondering, where's Springman? Wouldn't it make sense to use Smash to promote the new up-and-coming IP? Well, that's not how it's worked. In fact, there's a running trend of Sakurai taking a wait-and-see approach to brand new franchises and not grabbing a newcomer from them right away. And since Smash Switch likely started work in 2016 before ARMS was even announced and present in the public eye, you can see how it may have been seen as too much of an unknown. And with the official statement recently that said nothing outright but seems awfully pessimistic when you read into it, I decided to err on the side of caution, and let's be honest, if he doesn't make the base roster, there's a damn good chance he'll be DLC anyway. But then, you might be wondering, what about bigger IPs getting new games? Surely they'd cram a character in for the new Fire Emblem game, right? Well, actually probably not in the base roster. As of right now, we know nothing about the upcoming game. And with a release window looking to be around the same time as Smash, it'll be too late to have an effect. I know what you're thinking, but Roy was a last-minute clone whose game was supposed to be out before Melee but got delayed, and despite the fury Corrin was met with, Fire Emblem Fates was kinda out in Japan for almost 8 months before Corrin was added as DLC. Yeah, that got overlooked a lot. So, I strongly doubt we'll see anyone from FE16 right away. But if/when we get DLC for Smash Switch, then we'll talk. The same thing also applies for all the talk surrounding a Pokemon from Generation 8. Thing is, as of right now, the very idea of Gen 8 happening a year early is getting less and less likely, and the rumors suggesting such are either shaky or not necessarily implying a new generation. And even if it does happen early, that decision would likely have been made well into Smash Switch's development after the roster was already decided on. So we're best off sticking to Gen 7 for now, but again, if DLC lasts long enough, I could see a Gen 8 newcomer happening that way. So what about clones? Every Smash game has had a few of them, and Smash 4 turned a few alts into clones as a late bonus. And that's the thing, until we know more, it's kinda too early to make that call. I do think it's possible we could get a few bonus clones again, but they're added after the project plan is decided on, and so I figure we can't really predict them yet. And since you're probably still wondering about cuts, while I stand by thinking we might not get any if this game started out as an enhanced port and then became what it is now, if we do see cuts happen, here are the characters I feel are at the greatest risk of being left on the cutting room floor. No insults meant, sometimes things just happen. But again, we might not have any happen at all. Whew, that was a lot to go over. And we're technically not done yet. Stay tuned for part 2, where we build another roster that'll be a little wilder. Special thanks for this episode goes to Voyager, because wow, he went above and beyond with these designs. Come on, you think I could have been capable of something that looks this good on my own? Major thanks as well to my patrons, especially those of you who just joined, for keeping me afloat despite my physical condition. Glad to have you on board, guys. And if you yourself want to lend a hand in making these videos happen, and get various rewards for doing so, you're welcome too. And so, until next time. And remember, if your favorites got left out, nothing personal meant by it.